So this is where we should be right now. So the next step is we need to somehow get some data into here. There are two ways that we can get data sets created. We can either right-click on Galactic and add a data set, or we can just add one manually by right-clicking on Datasets and say Add Dataset. I'm going to show you both. Let's walk through the quote-unquote easy way first. If I right-click on Galactic and hit Add Dataset, it automatically brings me to this data source and create a query window. I give it a name. It's automatically selected to use the dataset embedded. It's already selected the Galactic. And I can go ahead and do the query designer here and design my query. If I were to click on Datasets, right-click and add Dataset, I have a little different window. It comes up and it says give it a name, and then it gives me the choice to browse for shared dataset or use a dataset embedded. If you remember going back to the report wizard, this is the screen that we saw first. We don't have a shared dataset. We have to use an embedded one, and we're going to choose that. And then we choose the data source, drop down, Galactic. And now we are at the same screen we would be had I simply right-clicked over here on Galactic and said Add Dataset. So a couple more steps by going the long way around, but they do end up in the same place regardless. So I'm already here. What I want to do is change it. I don't want it to be called Dataset. Again, this is going to benefit you in the future. You don't want to use the default names because it can get confusing if you have to go back and figure it out later. So we're going to go ahead and call this one Transport List. Now we need to click on the Query Designer. We could type in the SQL. At this point still, I don't care so much about knowing how to write the SQL. It's perfectly fine at this point to just go to the Query Designer and select the tables that we want to select. So if we come over here on the left-hand side, and we'll see that we have the Query Designer, we have our tables, views, and store procedures, very much similar to the wizard. We're going to expand our tables, and we're going to scroll down and look for one called Transport Type down here at the bottom. I'm going to expand that, and here are all the fields within my Transport Type table. I'm just going to get 3 of them. I want to get the description, the cargo capacity, and the range. So now I have my transport type. I have those 3. Now I'm going to look at my transport. These are the different types of transports. So I want the transport serial number, and let's go with the purchase date. And finally, I want to look at the repairs table. And I want to get the begin work date. So it's going to show me all of my types of transports that I have, their serial number, when I bought them. So these might be spaceships, and any that are out for repair, the date that I started working on them. So they are all over here. And with databases, especially relational databases, we have to have some sort of relation. Just by having them over there from different tables, we're not going to get what we expect. Right? We have to somehow group them together and create a single table out of them. And we do that through the definition of relationships. So in this case, right here in the middle, I have the select fields, relationships, and applied filters. Relationships actually has this little arrow on the right, drop-down arrow, which means I can expand it further. I'm going to do that, and this is showing me the built-in relationships. A good database design will have these relationships already built in for you, and they are. So we don't have to worry about figuring out what they are. They are already built in for us. So we're just going to look at these and verify that everything is good. Now, one thing to know is the type of join we're going to create. There are left joins or outer joins or inner joins. An inner join is used when we only want to see data that exists in both tables. A left join shows us data that wants to be in one of the tables, and the outer join shows us data that's in all the tables. Why does that matter? It depends upon what we're trying to get out of the data. Every type of transport is going to have a serial number and a purchase date. So regardless, every type of transport is also going to have a description, a cargo capacity, and a range under the transport type. However, not every transport is going to have some sort of repair on it. If you have one that's brand new, it'll never have been repaired. If we do a inner join, especially on repair, and we have a brand new piece of equipment that has never been repaired, we will not see it on the query because the inner join only shows us information that's in both tables. So it will only show us and only return results from these transports that have been, or at least started, repair. So we need to change that. So I'll come down here to transport, and I can do left, right, or full. In this case, I want to do left. So left means everything in the transport. I want to see all the transports, and even if they have not been repaired. So it's going to return nothing if they haven't been repaired, but if they have repaired, I'll get that date. So it's very important that I do that, because if I don't, like I said, things will not come across properly. If I want to see what this looks like, I can kind of run query, and here's the result. So the next thing we want to do is kind of filter out these transports that no longer exist, ones that we have retired. And we can do that by applying filters. So in writing SQL, this would be like a where clause, where this happens. And we do that very easily down here under applied filters. So we need to come down here and click on add filter. It's this little icon, looks like a starburst with a filter or a funnel icon. If I click on that, I've added a new filter. Right now it is on description because that was highlighted up here, but I can change that, and I don't want to filter on description. What I want to do is filter on a different option. So under the transport table, I actually have a retired date. I want to filter on retired date. So how do I do that? I want to say if there is a retired date, I don't want to see it. Or if there is no retired date, I don't want to see it. So retired date is null. All right, null means nothing. So if retired date is null. So let me go ahead and run this again. So right now you can see there's quite a few. Let's see if we have fewer. Yeah, quite a few. But half of them are gone. So I get a totally different list. And another way of visualizing this, I know right now it's conceptual. You're kind of following along what you're being told to do. But we can always come back in here and let's look at, visually, let's take a look at this transport. Where am I? And I'm going to click on retired date. So it's going to show up here now. And I'm going to delete this filter here. Click on this red X to delete my filter. And I'm going to run this again. And you'll see some of these here have retired dates, right? When I add that filter back, I'm going back here. Again, I don't want description. I want the transport retired date where that is null. So I only want to show a blank value here for retired date. And if I run this again with that filter in place, you'll see these top warp haulers will go away. So they are all gone. So now I am only showing active transports. So that's how the kind of the filters work. So right now, so far everything looks good. And we got to think, what else do we need to do? What else will help us with this query? Well, if I look at the details, and I actually kind of look to figure out what is this data showing me. I'm looking at the serial number, and I see Photon 3, and it's the same serial number. And I got a bunch of the same serial number for the star lifter. I'm seeing a lot of repeating serial numbers, and I got to think, why is that happening? And if I look at my query right now, I'm looking at repairs on transports, and I have this outer join here. And what's happening, what's going on, is I am having multiple work dates. All right, so this ship has been on or in for multiple repairs, and every time I have a different repair, it's creating a new line. So it looks like I have a lot more than I really do. I really have one Photon 3 with this serial number that I bought, back in May 14th of 2003. But I had it in the shop multiple times. And that's what's going on. So we need to somehow fix that. So I want to show the most recent begin work date, or the maximum work date. And I do that through the concept of grouping and aggregate function. So aggregate simply means the combined. So I don't want to see one record for every beginning work. I only want to see one begin work date. And I'm going to do that up here. I'm going to find my field of begin work date. If you notice on the far right under aggregate, it says none. So I'm going to change that. I want to see the most recent. So I click on none. I have a whole bunch of options. I just want to do max. Right? And when I do that, you'll notice it automatically by default, scroll up and down, changed everything else to group by. Right? So when you do one aggregate, every field has to have something. How there has to be a function like min, max, average, or simply grouped by. So I've done that. Let me do one more run just to show you what that looks like. There we go. So and I now have Photon 1. And if I expand this, you'll notice I have different serial numbers for every one. So I don't have quite as many as I thought I did, but this is accurate. I have the Photon, the description of it, a unique serial number, and the purchase date, and the most recent date that it was in the shop for repair. And you'll notice that each of these are different. I think at this point, I will be, for the most part, done. So this is how I use the visual editor to do this. If I wanted to see what it looked like and just write the SQL code itself, I come up here, I have this edit as text. If I click on edit as text, you'll see, I'm going to make this a little bigger, this is the actual SQL that it created for me. Now, as a SQL developer myself, there's a lot of things that I would not do. It's a little confusing. For example, the commas on each additional line are afterwards instead of at the end. Normally I would do transport that comma, and then but aside from those little formatting details, this is a simple SQL statement. I could have easily come in here and typed it just as easy as using the visual editor. I have this exclamation point up here, which is the run command. If I click on the exclamation, it's going to run it, and I will get the results below, just the same as the visuals. Now, as we saw, when we worked here in the Visual Designer and made some changes, it automatically created our SQL in the background, and we could view it in the edit text, and we could see it. However, keep in mind, once we start working in the text editor, we cannot go back and use a query designer. It's either one or the other. One other last thing before we go, I'm going to come up here and look, and I see up when I added the max, it automatically put the max underscore begin work date. It kind of gave it what's called an alias. So if I come up here, yeah, I can't change it, right? This is kind of fixed. If I wanted to change that so it didn't say max begin work date, I wanted it to say last work date, last repair date, anything besides that, I have to come back here to edit as text, and I find that, and you'll find my alias is right here. Here's my max, and if this as statement means it's an alias. Since I can't change the alias in the visual editor, I have to do it here in the text side, and it's okay to use Visual Designer to build it, and then we make the changes here in the text editor. So I would simply replace this here to last repair date. It seems to work pretty good. The only other thing I might do is sort this, because right now it is not sorted at all. The data is in as it is in the database. So I can come down here, and after my group by, I'll just type an order by, put a couple spaces just for formatting so it looks nice, and I'm going to do transport or type description. So I'm going to order by description. I'm going to put my comma, and then I will do serial number. So it's going to sort by description column, and then within that, serial number. And I'm going to hit run again. So now I have photon and serial number, CPSTU, WXY. So they are all now sorted by the description, then by serial number. I'll run this again. Everything works fine. I'll hit OK. And here is my data set. Pretty easy to do. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I now have a transport list data set that I can work with.